Well, hello there, and welcome back to Bloom Talks.
Hi, Charlie and Linda are here.
That's Linda, in case you're wondering. Um, all right, well, today's talk is about a subject that some of you may have some familiarity with. You may have been in this experience before on one side or the other. And what we will be talking about, the title of today's talk is what to do when he or she just doesn't want to talk about it.
It's more often he.
With good reason, though.
More often he.
There's good reason. I mean, it's not just that these guys who do tend to be, it tends to be those of the male persuasion who are more resistant to that. What's the percentage of instances in which the woman is the one who brings up the concern about the relationship?
85%,
Okay.
according to Gottman, who I totally trust his research is correct.
Yeah, you would believe that. But I think it's probably true. It's often women who tend to be more attuned to at least their perception of the need to have some clarifying communications. And it can appear as though the partner really doesn't care or isn't interested. But more often than not, there are some other reasons why the apparently non-cooperative partner seems to be resistant to the process. So we're going to be talking about that whole phenomenon and how it can be possible to interrupt that impasse that occurs when one person wants to talk about it and the other one doesn't.
So I want to tell you a little story. I think sometimes these archetypal stories who have held up the test of time for thousands of years have survived all that time because there's a kernel of wisdom, just a nugget of wisdom in the story. And this is a story about Nasruddin. And he was supposed to have lived in the Middle Ages in the Middle East. And he was kind of a rascal, but also kind of a holy fool and a wise teacher in some ways. So he had quite a following of students. And one day, one of his students comes walking in, and he sees Nasruddin taking one hot chili pepper out of another after another out of a bag and eating them. And his eyes are all bloodshot and tearing, and his mouth is all swollen and red. And his student says, "Nasruddin, teacher, what are you doing?" And he said, "I'm eating hot chili peppers." And he said, "I can tell that you're eating hot chili peppers, but I can see that you're suffering. Look at your lips are so swollen. Why do you keep eating them?" And Nasruddin says, "I'm hoping for a sweet one." And I think that this is a warning to us that when we do the same thing over and over again and we don't get a positive result, we might want to stop what we're doing and try something different. So I want to tell you an up-to-date story, a recent story about Matthew and Julia. And Matthew wasn't a bad guy. He was a good guy. He was a hard-working guy. He didn't smoke. He didn't drink. He was honest. He was devoted to his family, but he had some serious flaws. And the most serious flaw and the most upsetting flaw was that when Julia wanted to bring up some of the concerns that she had about the relationship, he would have a conversation stopper and he would say, "I don't want to talk about it." And when Julia would persist, because some of these things were really important to her, he didn't brush his teeth very much, and he had mouth odor, and he didn't shower enough, and he had BO, and it was impacting in their sex life. And he expected to be picked up after, and he'd drop his dirty socks and his wet towels on the floor, and she would pick up after him. But it was accumulating and it was bothering her. And so she wanted to sit down and talk about it, try to work out some agreements where he was taking more responsibility. And when she would press him, if it didn't shut her up when he would say, I don't want to talk about it, he'd say, that's just the way I am. So she would try to talk herself out of feeling so upset. She said, maybe my expectations are so high. And she would remind herself of his good qualities. And this really went on for years. She finally couldn't take it anymore. She said, I found a marriage counselor and I think we really must go because our relationship's in trouble. And he had another conversation stopper for that one. And he said, I don't believe in marriage counseling. And that was the big red flag to her. And she decided to stop hoping for a sweet one. So they ended up divorced. And this one's a cautionary tale because you can get away with it for a while. You can actually get away with it for a long time. But even if it doesn't break up your relationship, to keep relying on, I don't want to talk about it, and that's just the way I am, can really take your relationship down, even if you don't separate. The well-being in the relationship's not too good. When I talked to Julia later, she said, you know, he never misled me. He was consistent all along. He was like that when we dated. He was like that in the early part of our marriage and the middle part of our marriage. And it was me. It was me that was the romantic and really thought love conquers all and that he is going to change. And I'm so glad that she knew the story of Nasrudin. She said, I'm glad I stopped waiting for the sweet one.
Did she ever find the sweet one?
She did. She got into another relationship and she knew it was really important to her by the time she got into the relationship the next time. She had all kinds of agreements in place that it was not going to work for her to say, I don't want to talk about it and that's just the way I am. If either one of them had a concern, it was on the table and dealt with.
So she had a checklist, and when she met him, she asked him if he showered and if he brushed his teeth and when he changed his socks and what he did with his wet towels. And is that kind of like the conversation for the first date?
It wasn't that early in the relationship, but she knew
waited until the second date.
It wasn't the behaviors. It was the unwillingness to address anything that ruined them. And she wanted to vet anybody that she was considering getting into a committed partnership to see that they were willing to work with her around whatever issues, kids, sex, money, in-laws, whatever. That's what took them down.
So sometimes when these patterns, and I will call it a pattern because it is a repetitious phenomenon that these couples can go through with the same kind of dialogue and the same resistance continually. And you know, we call that a pattern because it repeats itself. But it's often much more obvious how one person is responsible or seems to be more responsible for the pattern than the other person. But yet, whenever there is a pattern in a relationship, there's never been a case in which I've observed where both people haven't played some part in co-creating this system.
And Julia clearly was a co-conspirator.
So what was her part in doing that?
She took responsibility for that she had overlooked things, that she had stuffed her feelings down for a long time, that she allowed him to shut her up with these conversation stoppers, that she hadn't put any agreement in place early in their relationship, that if their relationship was in trouble, that they would get help from a professional. And that she had overlooked so much, she indulged him. Every time she picked up his dirty socks, every time she made love with him, even though he hadn't brushed his teeth or taken a shower, she was giving him the message that this was in the realm of acceptability. So even though she was complaining intermittently from time to time, she really wasn't behaviorally making the changes.
So she had really helped to create the monster.
She indulged him for a long time.
Yeah.
Some people get out of relationships too fast before they've really given it their best. But she was clear that she stayed in way longer she was suffering for a long
So
time and hope.
do you think that if she had been more willing early on when these behaviors and this resistance first started to show up in the relationship, do you think that she could have averted the outcome? And do you think that he might have taken a different route if she had given him feedback about that?
Maybe. And it's some of these things we have to offer up to the mystery. He was pretty rigid, and he may just not have had the willingness. He was absolutely committed to his stance.
There's only one way that you can really find out whether the person has any flexibility at all.
Yeah.
And that always
Test
involves taking a risk.
Risking it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because if you do make it really clear early on, rather than before 150 repetitions have reinforced the pattern, if you make it really clear in the early stages, then the other person can say, look, this is how I am, and I'm not willing to budge on this.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, you really are faced with the need to make a decision. Is this something I'm willing to continue to tolerate? Or is this a deal breaker for me?
I think that most people are not in the category that Matthew was in. I think most people don't have that kind of rigidity where they absolutely wouldn't budge.
But maybe he wouldn't have had that rigidity early on if it hadn't been reinforced,
it wasn't reinforced
so many
much.
times.
Yeah, so I like to tell that as a cautionary tale for people who may be hoping for a sweet one or under the influence of the love conquers all myth. But I do want to appeal to the people who there's less rigidity, and it can go the other way. Sometimes it's the woman who says, I don't want to talk about it. But I think those are dangerous words. And I think that they don't have a place in a working partnership.
So let's talk about what you can do before it gets to that point, or in order to prevent it getting to that point. Because there are certain kinds of responses that we can make when our partner resists or refuses to accept our request.
So if this is something that is essential and important to one of the partners, I believe that they need to take a firm stand and to be very careful about the way in which they appeal to the other person, appeal to their enlightened self-interest, and say, this is really important to me, and I would like it if you would designate a time that works for you to hear me out.
Oh, I have an idea. Let's do it right now.
Okay.
Okay, so let's say that we've been in, you had requested that I talk about this, and I said, well, I'm too busy right now.
It's okay that if this isn't a good time, but I really want you to know that this thing that's bothering me.
Something's bothering you?
Something's bothering me.
Oh.
It's really upsetting me.
How long has it been bothering you for?
It's been bothering me long enough that I've tried to clear it on my own.
Oh, man.
And I can't do that.
Why didn't you tell me before now?
Okay, I'm telling you now.
Jeez.
Maybe you're right. I should have said it sooner.
Yeah.
And so I thought maybe I was going to be able to handle it by
Oh,
myself.
boy, what is it now? What did I do wrong now?
Okay, so
Okay.
it isn't anything that I want to blame you about or criticize you about. I would like you to hear me, that there's something that's upsetting me, and I can wait if there's going to be a time when you can be more focused and more present and more receptive to what I have on my heart. Okay? And I just want you to hear me out.
Okay. All right, good. Because this is not a good time for me, and
So just
let's
tell-
talk about it
just
some other
tell me
time,
when-
okay?
Just tell me when is a good time.
I'll let you know.
Oh, it would mean a lot to me if I knew, because
Yeah,
you
I
know
don't
you've
know.
been
I don't have
bothering
my
me for a while.
calendar, and I'm not sure
Well, let's go
right
get
now.
it.
And
Okay, I
it's-
can even go get it for you.
It's upstairs. I mean,
Okay,
this
look
is-
me in the eye. Look me in the eye.
I'm looking. I'm
Okay.
looking.
I don't feel like I asked for a whole hell of a lot. This is important to me, and believe me, don't make too big a deal out of it. If we can handle this thing, both of us are going to be way better off.
Okay.
Okay, so do you have a little time tomorrow? You're not working tomorrow. It's a weekend day. Can we take some time in the morning
Okay.
tomorrow?
All right. I'll tell you what. I'll go get my calendar and then I'll come back here and then we will come up with a time. Okay. So time out. So we've done that. Now
Okay.
I'm back and we're back. We're at the time tomorrow at 6:00 when we agreed that we would talk about it. And okay, well, here it is. I'm right on time. I'm
Now-
ready. Let me have it.
Okay.
Let me hear.
So I wanted
Yeah.
to let you know
Yeah.
that this thing that I feel like is in the way of us having the best possible relationship that we can have, that it is not my intention to be critical and it's not my intention to blame you. It's because I want us to both be closer. My intention in even bringing this up, it's for both of us, not just for me to win.
Well, I'm sorry that you're feeling like you're not getting what you want to get out of this relationship. I'm feeling pretty good about it. It's news to me.
I know, but you're
Yeah.
so self-contained and you're so self-reliant, and I'm more of a connector, and I just feel like I really want to have more designated time when I can count on being with you. I'm not saying that our relationship is in trouble. It's not in big trouble. This is a refinement. This is enrichment. This is something that would be even better than we've got already.
So what is it that you want from me? What is it that you're not getting from me that you want to get or got more of, or whatever it is? Like, how is it that I am causing this problem?
Because it's not so much on your radar screen to plan ahead for us to have a romantic getaway. And I love those. And when you go on them, you really enjoy them too. It's not on your radar screen for us to have a vacation that's what I call the honeymoon. Just the two of us go some wonderful place and the kids don't go and the grandkids don't go. Want to just have it for the two of us. Doesn't even have to be a whole week. It doesn't have to be a flight. It doesn't have to be expensive. But I love it when just the two of us go away somewhere. So those romantic getaways and those honeymoons, having them regularly, like a honeymoon every year and a few romantic getaways during the year, man, that's hitting the jackpot for me. And I know you could be a happy camper without them, but that's something that's really important to me.
Okay, well, that makes sense.
Could you get on board with that?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, can you see that we're not in trouble here, that this is to make it even better? We got a good thing going that I want to make it even better. I'm ambitious for our relationship.
Okay.
Okay, there's
All right.
a lot in it for you. You always love it when we go on these trips, just the two of us.
Yeah, well, we just have a lot on our plate right now, and I want to make sure that we handle it before we, take a bunch of time off.
We'll handle some of it, and you know what? Those waves just keep coming. So we're not going to handle it all. We're going to handle a lot, and then we're going to go away,
I can
and
tell
then
you
we'll
right
handle
now,
some more.
it may be a while before we're going to be able to take like a week or 10 days off and, go
Okay,
to
so
Hawaii or
maybe it'll be
someplace.
6 months. Okay, but in the next few months, could we take a weekend away?
Yeah, a weekend we can do.
Okay.
Okay.
Which weekend would you like to go?
I'll have to get my book again.
Get your book.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So we're going to have a definite time. Okay.
Okay.
I want to thank you
You're welcome.
for taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk to me about this, because it's so important to me.
Well,
and I really appreciate
You're
it.
welcome. And thank you for persisting to continue to make an effort to get through to me.
You're very welcome.
And I just want you to know that you did get through to me.
I got it.
And I hope you're satisfied.
I'm satisfied.
And I'm satisfied.
Okay, that's good.
Okay. So here, we're done with that. But what I'd like you to do is see if you can identify the things that worked that you think that Linda might have done or said that influenced me to lighten up on my resistance and to become more conciliatory and more open to considering, get off my defensiveness, get off my resistance, and to be more open. How is it that what did you see happened that enabled that to happen? Because she didn't give up. She didn't get frustrated and angry. So what did you notice about how she spoke? Mm-hmm. Just give that some thought. We're gonna say a few things about that, but I want you to give the viewer to give some thought to that question, because there were definitely things that she did. Even though we were kind of play acting, or role playing, I really did feel like my resistance did soften.
Yes, it did. And we've played this out many, many times back in the day.
But it wasn't always that way. It wasn't always that way.
Years ago.
Sometimes it was pretty ugly.
Mm-hmm. And we had to have some agreements in place. One of the agreements was that it wasn't acceptable to say, I don't want to talk about it, or that's just the way I am. Neither one of us could use that as a stopper. And to procrastinate and put it off also was not really honoring the well-being of the relationship and showing respect to the person who wanted to tack down the time. So I hope that you notice that I was flexible. If this isn't a good time to talk, we can find another time to talk. But being patient and flexible is only part of the equation. Being persistent and firm is the other part. So you have to find that sweet spot there.
Well, also to not be threatening and not be blaming and not be judging. Mm-hmm. One of the problems with waiting too long to bring this to your partner's attention is that what happens is that the frustration accumulates and it often degrades into resentment, mm-hmm. or anger or shaming or mm-hmm. blaming or guilt tripping. And that doesn't help mm-hmm. to soften the other person's resistance. It just mm-hmm. amplifies it.
So I was committed to creating safety so that Charlie could feel that he would be at ease. And I told him, this is for you too. This isn't just for me. This is a win-win for both of us. I said things to try to reassure him that there was something in it for him. And that sweetens up the offer to get together. And I stayed with my own intention. I announced my intention. It's for us to be closer and to thrive even more than we are. I reassured him there's nothing, that we're not in trouble. Do you know, our relationship is good, but I want it to even be better. So I was saying things that were reassuring, and he responded to that and stayed with me. And you notice one time I asked him to really look at me in the eye, because I feel like when we look our partner in the eye and they really look into us, that sometimes has a stronger message in it. This is really important to me. I don't ask you for all that much. And this is important. So I want you to take note of that and come stretch into my world, because you know you're better off when you pay attention to things that are really important to me.
Well, the other thing is, and for me, and I think for a lot of people, the way you begin that conversation, the way you offer your request or your invitation, whatever you want to call it, is incredibly important. Mm-hmm. And you did not start with those
we have to go away.
Four most fearful words that any man can ever hear from his partner, which is, we need to talk. So you didn't, because as soon as I hear those words, I'm already gone. Mm-hmm. I'm already, oh, shit, what did I do wrong now? What now? And I brace myself to defend myself against what I anticipate as the oncoming assault and accusations. And when you don't begin that way, and then when you don't come at me with what you never or you always, or all of this kind of
No demands,
blaming
no
and
commands.
then even though I can start out anticipating the worst, when I don't get it, my defenses naturally diminish, and when they do, I naturally, effortlessly just open up and I'm more receptive.
Mm-hmm. Now, what the viewer is not seeing is the preparation that I did beforehand to get really clear about how this was so important to me that I didn't want to back down. So doing some preliminary work on our own to get to the point where maybe we've rehearsed a little bit in our mind about how we're going to say it, to make sure that it doesn't come across blamey, that it doesn't come across critical, that the other person's not going to feel threatened, that that it really and truly is the invitation. Because demands and commands activate the other person's control stuff big time, and you don't want to go there. You want to help them to see why there's a lot in it for them. And I want you to take special note of my sincere thank you to Charlie at the end for taking the time out of his busy schedule and listening to what I want and creating the agreement with me, because I know his word is good. He's a high integrity man. So when he gives me his word that we're going to go on a honeymoon, just the two of us, without anybody else there, and when we're going to go on a romantic getaway, that he really means it, and that's going to give me the kind of peace of mind so that I'm not going to be anxious and agitated about it and feeling deprived. I hope that you felt inclined to pick up my invitation when I offer it in the future, because we had a success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I stopped arming myself, anticipating, the attack, when you continued to speak in terms of we having a problem, or you having a concern, as opposed to feeling like the finger of blame and shame is being pointed at me. And that's something that I think a lot of couples can very easily get into. I know we spent a lot of time going round and round in that years ago, but it makes an incredible difference when we're speaking in terms of the challenge that we are experiencing and what we're dealing with, as opposed to pointing that blaming, shaming finger at the other person.
So I read these two books that I really like, The Female Brain and The Male Brain. And the author that wrote them said that if men understood the way women's brains work and the terrific switchboard that they have that the male brain doesn't have, that they'd have female brain envy. And I think it's one of the reasons that women they're good thinking on their feet and have a lot of vocabulary to be able to express themselves, and they get a lot of permission from the culture to be in touch with their feelings. And I think a lot of times men don't want to engage in these nitty-gritty conversations because they think that the women maybe outclass them, or that they've got a higher level of skill in the communication department. And that may be true, but the wise men, the emotionally intelligent men, come into the game and they play the game and they learn how to be terrific communicators. And I'm grateful to you that even though you had a little bit of a lag about seeing how important the game was, that you stretched into my world and learned how to play well. And I feel like I can bring up anything now, and that's so freeing for me, that there isn't any subject that I can't broach. And you'll come and join me. You might not agree with me, but you'll listen. I can go on the record, and we can have some understanding.
Speaking of the game, the clock is ticking.
Yes.
And the game is about in the end of the fourth quarter. so we need to.
No extra innings.
We need to wrap it up. No, there's no quarters in football.
Mixed games.
In baseball.
Okay.
Innings are in baseball. quarters are in football. I keep telling you that.
Okay.
Mixed
I
metaphors.
stretch into your world.
Okay. Okay. So anyway, we're that's you want to get the whole thing. We're
It's hard to get it on the screen.
yeah. Well, it's okay. We're giving away 3 free ebooks.
They're really good, if I do say so myself.
And if you want to get them, the information is there. Just go to where do they go to?
Bloomwork.
Yeah, go to
Follow the prompts.
go to our website, and all the information about how to get those books. And if you're not already on our mailing list, that will also get you our newsletter if you would like to receive that, which we send out once a month. So
Next week's topic.
stay tuned. Next week, we're going to be talking about apologies and what it is that you might want to think about before you apologize to really make a skillful apology. So in the meantime, have a great week.
And tell your Facebook friends about our presentation today. Spread the word.
Bye.